Hi, this is Cedar of Cedar Sacred Well. I want to talk a little bit about the concepts of capacity and regulation and what they have to do with each other. Because I think a lot of people misunderstand these concepts individually and then also how they connect and how you can either be increasing both or decreasing both through that sort of synergy between them. So, I have another video on the true meaning of regulation and dysregulation. So, I will link that. I'm not going to go too much into it now, but just to say that a lot of people think regulation means being in the rest state, but it's actually the ability to move in and out of the different states in a way that is appropriate to the given moment. So if there's an actual threat in your environment and you're in an activated state, good job. You're very regulated in that case. You're responding appropriately to the threat. So check out that video. I think there's some good nuggets in that. But for now, I want to spend more time just explaining a bit about capacity and how it connects to this idea of regulation. So capacity is the amount of stimulation and stress that we can experience without getting overwhelmed, without starting to get into that intense dysregulation state where we have very little access to rest or relaxation, nervous system, parasympathetic state. So everything that we do, everything that we experience requires capacity in some way. This becomes very obvious when you have something like chronic fatigue syndrome or similar, illness with a lot of fatigue. And suddenly, you're experiencing exhaustion from the lights being too bright or from music playing or things that you never really would have thought took anything from you or took any kind of capacity or energy to just experience. Those passive activities, maybe like watching TV or just having a simple conversation. All of those things actually take capacity. And when your capacity is extremely, extremely limited, as it is with often chronic illness, then any little thing like that might be too much. It might go over your capacity given everything else that is already there. On the other hand, if you're a healthy person, like myself now that I've recovered, you still might bump up against the edge of your capacity if you have a lot going on. This month, I've had a ton going on, and I really have been hitting the edge of that capacity. There's been unexpected work stress. There's been, trying to build my business and launch this new class. There's been planning for the Tahoe Rim Trail, which is a 175-mile backpacking trip, and all of the logistics that go with that, as well as the physical training and exercise that goes with it. So all of those things taken together, if I have a day where maybe there's another stressor or something else happens, or I'm also trying to volunteer that day or do something like that, that might go over my capacity, even though my capacity is actually quite large now. And you might have that experience too. So just think about, when do you feel like, oh, this is just too much? I can't. If one more thing happens, I just can't handle it. I'm just gonna go to bed, or I'm gonna blow my top, or something like that. Maybe there's been circumstances recently. Maybe it has to do with the news or the political situation, and just having this bombardment of bad news coming at you from different angles, or maybe there's some other stressor in your personal life. So just thinking about where in your life is that edge of capacity. Do you start to go over capacity? And I also want to acknowledge that not everything that takes capacity is activating or stressful, right? If you want to do fun things, that takes capacity. Like this backpacking trip I have planned. I'm so excited about it, and it's going to be so much fun, but it takes a lot of capacity to plan for it, to prepare for it, to get in shape for it. And then also, once I'm on the trail hiking 10 to 15 miles a day, that's a lot of capacity. So think about also things that you enjoy doing, that you want to do, that take capacity, that maybe sometimes you have to say no to or pull back from because of all the other things going on, where maybe you wish you had more capacity to be able to engage with them. So just keeping that in mind, I like to use a metaphor of a pipe for capacity. So if you think of, say there's a pool of water, a tank of water, and that water is all of the life stuff. It's the stressful stuff, it's the annoying stuff, it's the fun stuff, it's the things that you're excited about, it's all the other little things like talking with your partner, like going to a show, like maybe getting triggered, maybe spending time with someone that is important to you but is stressful or draining, driving a car, watching a show, like all of those things take capacity. And then there's also the bigger stuff, like going on a big trip or doing other important creative projects that you love to do. Big emotions also take capacity. I have another video about that coming out soon, so I'll link it below once it's ready. Our capacity is hugely impacted by the emotions that we're experiencing and then how we handle those emotions, how we deal with them. Especially if we're suppressing emotions, that takes up a lot of capacity without necessarily even noticing it. So we have all of these life things on one side, and then all of that has to fit through our capacity. So if you think of your capacity as this little pipe, it's only going to let a little bit through. No matter how much you put on that other side of it, only a tiny bit is ever going to come out because it's such a small pipe, or it's going to burst, right? If the pressure builds up too much and you're trying to put too much through it, it's just going to burst. You're going to be in that state of total overwhelm, dysregulation. This is often when we get sick. It's when we feel burnt out. We can't motivate to do anything at that point because it's just too much. It's just overwhelming. On the other hand, if we have a larger pipe, if our capacity is bigger, it's able to allow more of that life stuff to come through. So we're able to experience more life. We're able to do more. We're able to have those bigger feelings. We're able to handle more stress. All of that is able to flow through much more easily. We can experience more life, and we're way less likely to have that pipe burst, right? Because it's already bigger. It's already allowing for more flow. So it's much less likely that there's going to be so much pressure that it backs up enough to burst. So that's all well and good, but how do I make my pipe bigger, right? Maybe you're noticing that, oh man, I have like a little drip at the moment, or I wish that capacity pipe was allowing more through. Maybe there's more things I'd like to be doing. So there's a couple different ways that we can work on building capacity. One of them is regulation, because the more dysregulated we are, which is to say that we're chronically in one of those activated states, the more our capacity is going to shrink. It's just like a direct correlation between, if I'm dysregulated, I have lower capacity. And then on the flip side of that, if I'm going over my capacity consistently, and I am very frequently dipping into that overwhelm, I'm putting on too much, the pipe is getting ready to burst, that will dysregulate you very quickly. So even if you have a very healthy and regulated nervous system, if you try to pile on too much and you're going way over your capacity, you will start to get dysregulated. And that's exactly what happened to me this month, because I had planned for a lot. I'd planned to be, getting close to the max of my capacity, and then unexpected things happened, right, that piled on top of that. And I noticed myself getting dysregulated, even though this is my work, right? I focus on the nervous system all the time. It's still something that I have to think about. And it started showing up in my sleep. I was sleeping poorly. I was having digestion issues, which, is kind of a throwback to when I had CFS. I was even having some fatigue, not full-blown symptom fatigue, but I was tired and my mood was suffering. So all these things are going to start to show up when that dysregulation is occurring and when you start to go over your capacity. And maybe that's something that you've noticed yourself, that, boy, when I try to do too much, I try to take on too much, or have too much stress, I always get stomach aches, or, I always get insomnia, or, it could show up in a lot of different ways. So if we're focusing on regulation, that's going to have a positive impact on our capacity over time. It's a slow process, but it will help your capacity. But that's not the only piece of building capacity. And that's where a lot of people stop, right? You do the somatics, which I love somatics, and you do the vagus nerve exercises, you're meditating, you're doing yoga nidra, all these things. You're focused on regulation. And that's wonderful. But there's actually more to building capacity than just regulating. I've identified 4 different areas that we need to be addressing or be moving towards in order to build capacity. The first 2 are all about regulation. So that's agility, the ability of the nervous system to move in and out of these different states, the vagal tone, working on the vagus nerve, all those sorts of things. And then the other one is awareness. So is my nervous system state appropriate to the present moment? Or am I reacting to something in the past, something in the future, something I'm imagining, something that's happening somewhere else? Or am I aware of what's right here? There's other pieces of self-awareness in that too, like knowing your triggers, knowing your nervous system states, all that sort of stuff. But that axis of the compass is essentially all to do with regulation. Because as I mentioned, those 2 things move together one way or the other. They're either helping or hurting each other. And then the other side of the compass is this piece that a lot of people forget about, which is attunement and acceptance. So attunement is really getting to know your own nervous system. It's a lot to do with the emotional piece, as I mentioned earlier, because that has such a big impact on capacity. So how am I meeting myself in these moments where maybe I am activated? Maybe I am having strong emotions. Those could be difficult emotions, anger, grief, fear, sadness, but also big positive emotions, excitement, joy, fun, happiness. All those things also require capacity. So we need to be able to meet those in a good way. And then on the other side is acceptance. So are we living from a place of self-acceptance and self-compassion? And can we accept whatever shows up? So this is where we often practice accepting things that might be a tiny bit outside or on the edge of our capacity. We can practice accepting joy. That can be a really lovely thing to practice. We can also practice sitting with symptoms. If you have difficult physical symptoms that you're dealing with, we practice sitting with those, building our capacity to be with that. It also has to do with when things come up, which, life stuff always will. How are we using those moments to actually build capacity rather than fighting against them and stressing ourselves out even more and creating even more dysregulation? So these 4 concepts together help build our capacity. And that's what I'm exploring in the Capacity Compass. Navigate to Your Bigger Life, which is a 4-week program that is going to be diving into each one of these directions and really learning, what is my capacity now? How do I build it? Which of these directions? Maybe you're already doing a lot in one or two of these directions, which is fantastic. Then what else do we need to build onto that? What else can we add in, or in some cases take away, right? To expand the capacity in all directions so that you really see that pipe getting bigger, so you can actually feel more life, coming through. So my last question for you is, what would you do with more capacity? What would you want your bigger life to look like? Or, if you had that bigger pipe, what would you hope to be coming through? So just taking a moment to think about that. When I was sick, it was a lot about travel, hiking, obviously, traveling, exploring. Maybe for you, it's something else. Maybe you even want to close your eyes and just imagine that for a moment. Just imagine that bigger life with that fun, wonderful thing that you get to do because you have more capacity. And just curious, what would that be worth to you? What would it be worth to have that in your life now? What would you be willing to commit in terms of funds, in terms of time, in terms of practice, resources? And once you have the answer to those two questions, I would love for you to click the link below and just look at the Capacity Compass program and see if it feels like a good fit for you. If you're feeling a yes in your body, go for it. Build your capacity. Sign up. I would love to see you inside. And if you're feeling a no in your body, it's important to honor our no's. That builds capacity too. So it's important to recognize that as well. And lastly, I just want to say that sometimes dysregulation can lead to indecision. Indecision is often a trauma response. So letting whatever answer comes to you first or feels truest in your body, in your gut, be the right answer for you and acting on that. All right, I hope to see you there. Thank you. And feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat. I'd love to hear what your bigger life would look like.